Yeah.
It's not fine.
Yeah. Just saw it.
Used to be a corner of the bank.
Oh, I think that was left from city council.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. I'll get
I'll
it.
just ignore it. All right, I call to order the November 20th meeting of the Los Alamitos Planning Commission. Can I have a roll call, please?
Chair Riley,
Here?
Vice Chair Sofocanic,
Here.
Commissioner Andrade,
Here.
Commissioner Quilty,
Here.
Commissioner DeBolt,
Here.
Commissioner Gross,
Here.
and Commissioner Lowe.
Here.
All right, please stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, at this time, I'm going to open the floor to oral communications. If there's anyone present that would like to come forward and speak on an item that is not on the agenda, now would be the time to come forward and do so. All right, seeing no one come forward, I'll close oral communications and move on to approval of minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None? Motion carries. We have no items on the consent calendar, so we'll move on to item 7A. Approval of site plan review, SPR 1901, denial of conditional use permit, CUP 1902. We will discuss the denial of the conditional use permit first. Is the public hearing already open? Did we,
No.
Annette, did we
Is it-
continue
oh,
it?
it is. It is.
I have to recuse myself. Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
Oh.
Again.
Yeah,
Still, whatever. I'm out. Somebody come get me. Yeah.
We won't forget this time. Mr. Chair, this is identified as a hearing item. However, the directive that was given last month by the commission was to bring back a resolution of denial for the conditional use permit, as well as allow for the applicant to resubmit and update their plans in accordance with the car wash being removed from the site, and also with consideration given to comments that were previously provided to the applicant by staff a few months back. So we brought those items for you for your consideration. Again, there's specifically a resolution regarding the conditional use permit. We'd recommend that you consider that first. Once that matter's been addressed, then we would have the opportunity to present to you the new site plan without that item being a part of it, and allow for you to consider that on its own merit. It's at your discretion with regards to if you'd like to hear any comments specific to the denial resolution, but we would definitely ask you to open up the hearing specifically for the revised site plan, because we did submit a public hearing notice addressing that.
Okay, so we can just move forward with the denial resolution without having to open up a public hearing?
Yes, that's correct. It's at your discretion, but the second item would need to be, it is a public hearing that was properly noticed to everyone and published accordingly for the second part of that.
Okay. I think we have a lot of people here, so I think opening the public hearing just for good measure. And I also want to state on that denial of the conditional use permit, I won't be participating in the discussion or the decision on that matter, because I wasn't here for some of the previous meetings on that matter. But for the site plan review, that's a new item coming before us tonight, so I'll be participating on that. But we're going to go ahead with the denial of the conditional use permit first, and I'm going to open up the public hearing on that. Would anyone like to come forward and speak on that item?
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Samir Hijazi, and I am the applicant for the new site plan review submitted as a result of our last meeting's discussion about removing the car wash and bringing a C-store without a car wash. Are we going to talk about the...
We're just doing the denial.
Oh, the denial.
car
Okay,
wash.
so based on the meeting before last, the commission voted to deny the project based on the car wash issues that were raised in the meeting. We have discussed it afterwards with staff, and we've come to realize that this is not a desirable item for the site, and we basically acquiesced. I mean, we're accepting the result of the elimination of the car wash.
Okay, thank you very much.
We have no contest to that.
Okay, thank
All
you.
right, thank you.
All right, is there anyone else that would like to come forward and speak on this item? All right, with that, I'll close the public hearing on that and bring it back to the commission for discussion.
I'll move denial of the car wash.
I'll second it.
All right, I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And I abstain. All right, with that, we'll move on to the site plan review. Do I have a staff report, please?
Yes, the site plan review is 1901, and as you remember, last month, we asked the applicant to talk with staff, and we did over the last month, and came up with what we feel like is a much better looking building than was shown before. You'll notice that there is a tower in the middle. That's the biggest change, with these windows at the top and standing seam metal roof on there. And then where corrugated metal was on the front is now rock. And on the sides, there is arbors that stick out from the building that will have vines that grow up over them. Let me bring the next thing. Let's see, let me get to there. Okay, and you'll notice the back of the building, the upper part is the last month's submission. This month is on the bottom, and you'll notice that there's a lot more detail than there was before. So it's staff is pretty happy with it and does recommend approval of that. The new site plan looks like that. As you see the car wash being gone, it's pushed back to the back of the property, and they will continue to have all the gas pumps that they have right now. They are not taking any of those out. So it's a little bit larger convenience store, so it's just gas station and convenience store. So that concludes my report.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just add a couple of more comments to this, too. If you'll recall, the staff concerns that were raised previously, it was combined review with a car wash and the convenience store both, but we did talk about traffic circulation as well as the architecture and site design overall. We feel that that resubmittal that's come in with the removal of the car wash, the relocation that's occurred pulling the building further to the south, near the south property line, allows for much better circulation. The existing pumps, as was mentioned, will remain as is. They've also added additional parking too. In our opinion, the parking is probably excessive for the size of the convenience store, but better to have more parking than not enough. So our opinion is, in reviewing that from a circulation standpoint, it's a dramatic improvement from what was previously identified, and we believe that the existing road network and signal at Siboney and Catella can accommodate the traffic that would be generated from this project. So I just wanted to add that to the report.
Okay, thank you. All right, with that, I'll open the public hearing. And is there anyone that would like to come forward and speak on this item?
Good evening. My name is Samir Hijazi. I'm the applicant for the project, the Chevron at 5100 Catella. My address is 20261 Southwest Acacia Street, Suite 240, Newport Beach, California. In concurrence with the staff report and with discussion with staff over the last few weeks, we have redesigned the project to accommodate previous comments and improve the architecture and the circulation of the project. Additionally, the way we designed the site will give you and give all residents around that live around the neighborhood the assurance that there will never be a car wash ever considered as the way it was cited. We could have actually left the store as it is and left room behind it and, improved the architecture. But what we did, we actually consumed most of the buildable area to the store versus allowing a future thought, not by this owner, maybe by somebody else that is going to come in. As you know, this was proposed before. So, I didn't know that until a couple of weeks before we presented here, and it was denied before. So we had the second attempt. So this puts it to rest forever, or for as long as I live, probably, based on the cost of improvements and the life expectancy of businesses. So all in all, we concur with the recommendations, and we've worked closely with staff to arrive at the solution that we have today. And I would be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for the applicant? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Would anyone else like to come forward and speak on this item? Okay. Please step forward.
I'm Roberta Martinez. My husband and I own the property just to the west of this, 5030 Catella plus the Dutch Haven shopping area. If they move that car wash to the back, what do people do? As soon as they get the car washed, they pull out. More than likely, they're going to park on our parking lot, and then they're going to wipe things down.
I just want to clarify, the car wash is no longer a part of the project under consideration.
He said they were moving it to the back.
He'd moved the convenience store to the back. So the car wash there's not going to be a car wash at that
So there
site.
will be no car wash?
No.
Okay, can you give us a little more information on the size and scope and what they're going to have in the convenience store? Because you're right opposite of my convenience store.
So this time right now is for you to come up and make comment. I don't know that it's supposed to really be a back and forth discussion. I'm not sure how we want to handle.
Mr. Chair, we could quickly answer the question.
Okay.
The convenience store is about 2,800 square feet in size, and it will be a general convenience store, as has been noted by the applicant previously and is identified, I believe, in the staff report. There will be no alcohol sales associated with this project, but all of the other standard amenities you would have within a convenience store would be provided, but no alcohol sales would occur at this location.
Are they going to have an eating area in there?
No.
No. Okay, so that if they buy food, processed food, like a sandwich or something, they're going to carry it out, right?
That is
I'm
correct.
going to
That's
defer to
correct.
staff on these
Okay.
questions.
Right now, there is no seating area in the,
Are you planning it later?
I'm not the operator. but
You're
I can
not.
tell you It wasn't designed to.
I'm just concerned about my parking area because it's a
Yeah.
lot- when
So I'm going to have to kind of ask you to, you're, right now is your commentary time to address the commission. If you want to have discussions with the applicant, you could do that after,
Oh, I'd be
you know,
happy
after
to.
the meeting.
But I don't think you're very crowded tonight. I wonder if the neighbors were notified.
All right, is there anyone else that would like to come forward and speak on this item? All right, with that, I'm going to close the public hearing and bring it back to the commission. Questions for staff or discussion or a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None? Motion carries. Congratulations.
Thank
All right, that takes us to item 7B, General Plan Amendment, GPA 1901.
Wait
Staff
for,
report?
wait.
Larry. Oh, sorry. I jumped the gun.
They're putting the car wash behind your house.
Sweet. I don't have to take a shower anymore. Car wash.
All right, item 7B, General Plan Amendment, GPA 1901.
Right.
Staff report, please.
Chair Riley and members of the Planning Commission, let me get to the right screen here. General Plan Amendment 1901 and Zoning Ordinance Amendment 1901. Consider changes to the general plan designation and the zoning code for the building at 4281 Catella Avenue. You may recognize it from the picture there. Yeah, I'll talk about that later. Anyway, the applicant is here with us tonight. Perry Banner of Michael Baker International, on behalf of CGM Catella LLC, is in the audience, so if you have questions, he's here to answer. Mr. Banner has submitted an application requesting approval to change the site's general plan designation from planned industrial to professional office, and the zoning code from planned light industrial to commercial professional office, which is CO, and it's now PM. The history of the building is really unclear. The 1987 certificate of occupancy identifies the structure just as an office building, and the zoning at that time was the same as it is today, planned light industrial. We're not sure why it was an office placed there, but it was part of a larger business park. The whole cul-de-sac was at one time built together, and I imagine this was intended as the 30% office that's allowed in the planned light industrial zone, but it has to be office that's ancillary to industrial uses. And through the years, it has ended up having medical offices and regular offices in there. We're not sure how that happened, but we've decided in 2012 that it was legal non-conforming, and then if they came to us and presented a medical use, they could replace what's there, and as long as they don't add to it. So the applicant would like to, in the future, be able to add more medical, but they know that they need more parking for that. So this is a small step toward their figuring out how to have more medical in the building. However, it will probably stay for quite a while exactly as it is, with part medical and part regular professional office. So let's see here. Medical offices occupy about 24% of the building, with this use occurring for a number of years. And some of the medical offices are actually laboratories. Those would stay permitted in the CO zone, because laboratories can be either in the industrial zone or in the CO zone. So that would be fine if this changed to commercial office. And let's see, the applicant has identified their intention to increase the medical, but as we said, there's about 288 spaces there, and with the mix they have right now, it's really it needs more parking than that, but staff has visited the location quite a few times, and the parking lot is never really filled or anything like that. So it's good the way it is, but if we suggest that every time a medical use would come, that we revisit the issue and try to decide whether or not we would ask them maybe to have a parking management plan or something done to find out whether it would be okay to add that use to this building. The request requires a resolution of the Planning Commission recommending to the City Council that they change the zoning designation and the general plan designation. So tonight you have a resolution that you would be approving, and then the City Council would then in turn, if you recommended it, would approve the change. So that concludes the report.
Thank you. All right, at this time, I'm going to open the public hearing. If anyone would like to come forward and speak on this item, I actually do have a request to speak here from Jennifer Lynch.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Jennifer Lynch. I am a land use attorney with the law firm Manat, Phelps and Phillips, and I am here on behalf of our client, JCB Incorporated, which of course owns the property at 4411 Catella, also known as the Arrowhead site, and it's immediately east of the proposed designation change that you're considering tonight. We submitted a letter to you earlier this morning. I understand that it's been provided to you, so I don't want to belabor it too much, but there are a couple things that I did want to reiterate that are in that letter. First, it's important to our client, JCB Incorporated, and the future of Arrowhead products, that the city's general plan and zoning provide for the Arrowhead site's continued industrial operations and uses, and that any proposed amendments not create a land use incompatibility with the surrounding parcels, the majority of which are, right now zoned planned light industrial. The city's general plan and one of the city's economic strategies is to maintain industrial uses, which are an important component of the local economy. Specifically, Policy 2.1 in your economic development element directs the city to protect and maintain these employment-generating uses. JCB wants to note that this project area, this designation that's before you, would allow more non-industrial uses in what is primarily an industrial area. However, we have reviewed the staff report, and the buildings on this property are currently occupied by a variety of businesses, including those that are, right now not industrial in nature, and no new structures or changes to the existing built environment look to be proposed. So given the nature of these existing uses and the ability of these uses to continue operating in a manner that would be compatible with and protective of the Arrowhead site, JCB Incorporated just wanted to reiterate its support for these proposed amendments. Thank you.
I forgot to mention too, you have a letter in from from them.
Is there, yeah.
I was going to speak with the name.
Sure.
Chair Riley, members of the Planning Commission, good evening. My name is Perry Banner, and it's a pleasure to be here tonight. I'm the applicant and representing CGM Catella, the owners of the property. And first of all, thank you to the staff for working with us on this application and for presenting. I was just hoping to maybe kind of complete the picture a little bit for the Planning Commission. Tom did a great job of explaining the history of the sites, and to just help out a little bit, the building was constructed in 1987, and if you look through the permit history and the application history, you'll see that when the building was originally constructed, if you go into the building, its structure is that of an office building. It was never built for an industrial use of any kind. If you look at the industrial park that is just north of the site, those buildings have an office, and then they've got a space with roll-up garage doors, so they can have this light industrial uses happening in there. And this just isn't going on at the Catella Corporate Center. The applicants, and let me just say this as well, since the inception of the building, there's always been office uses in that building, and there's been medical offices have cycled in, attorneys, engineers, the whole like. What my client is intending to do is not to open up the floodgates for medical uses to occur at the Catella Corporate Center. What's been going on now, even though the 32-year history of the site is that these uses have been allowed, because since 2012 these uses have been designated as legal nonconforming, if a medical office, for example, that had been in there for years was to leave, the only way another medical office could come in is if they apply, and they've got a 180-day window to do so before that legal nonconforming use just reverts to what is principally allowed. So this is a challenge for my client. Like I say, medical uses have been in there for 32 years. They just want the ability to sort of clear up that legal nonconforming status, have medical office uses, labs, your typical standard offices allowed on the property. And that's why we're trying to achieve the commercial professional office designation, just to avoid, like I say, that the hoops that not only my client has to jump through, but any potential tenant that comes into this site. And we fully understand, we fully appreciate that parking would be an issue or will be an issue. And so we're in complete agreement with staff that as any use, whether it be a medical office use or a standard office use comes in, there will be a parking analysis that's done just to make sure that, that the site and the parking that's available can accommodate the uses that are proposed and existing on the property. My client is here tonight as well. We're available for any questions once the commission gets into that. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to come forward and speak on this item? All right. With that, do I need to keep the public hearing open if we're going to have any questions for the applicant?
You should, you have to reopen it if you do have questions.
Okay, so I'll just leave it open for now and bring it back to the commission. Questions for staff, the applicant, or discussion?
I have a question. It's a site review. You said 24% of the occupancy is medical?
Yeah, and then there's some of the medical type uses are laboratory use, which is that they're medical testing laboratories and stuff like that. So there's a little more when you add those in.
What would be the tipping point percentage-wise when the 288 existing spaces?
Right now.
Right now?
That's it, yeah.
So anything above 24, any additional medical offices are going to take us into non-conforming parking?
Correct, unless they are, well, if it was to stay planned light industrial, if they were ancillary to an industrial business or another laboratory, they could go in there without questioning about parking. But a traditional medical office has to be, we have to question how much parking is available for it. And it's right at the tipping point right now.
So if we allow this, it could become fully medical?
No, not at the current time, unless a parking study was done, and we would probably bring that to you to look at, to show that they could do that sort of thing in this lot. So
that'd be the only thing that would prevent them from going fully medical was the parking, and they would come to us?
Right.
For approval?
Well, it's not set up that way right now. Right now, if a medical office wanted to go in this building, they would submit a business license permit application to me, and then I would check and see if it's replacing, first of all,
right,
a medical place, and if it's not, if it's adding addition to, I will check the parking again. And we put a matrix in your report, and we will go through that in the future. I will have it on my desk and replace any new business that goes in there on that sheet so that we always keep track of it. We have quite a few buildings around the city that we do that with, and that are just right on the tipping point for medical. So hopefully that answers your question.
Mr. Chair, if I could add too, I want to mention that our new zoning code provisions, if you may recall, there was some added language that is not currently in the code, but when that goes into effect, there is the ability that they could go through a parking analysis and possibly explore different options that would be reviewed and have to be approved, either administratively or having to come back to the commission depending upon the circumstance. But there is that option too, and as was noted by Tom earlier, the current situation that exists out there, I'm sure there are moments maybe where it is close to a capacity, but like for example, just to check one more time, I went by about 2:30 this afternoon and I stopped counting at 40 stalls that were vacant. So there is space there. We're looking at it mathematically from our requirements, which we have to adhere to. However, there could be a parking study done that comes back identifying that there is sufficient space to add additional square footage. And there's a mechanism then for that independent study to be reviewed either administratively or by the commission for review and approval. And again, this is a matter of a development standard that has to be adhered to either on a case-by-case basis or in conjunction with a proper parking analysis and approval of that analysis. So there are options to address that development standard, but our position is we have to ensure that whatever that is, either the fundamental basic requirement of the parking standards in the code today have to be adhered to, or if there's a separate approval of a study and an analysis, that adherence to that has to be met, regardless of how much square footage there is of medical or other uses that are higher intensity in parking than a standard office. So hopefully that helps too.
Thank you. And also, I'd like to have the letter from Minot placed into the record.
We will.
So really, this is just basically cleaning up what would then allow a business to go in and not have to get a permit for illegal non-conforming every single time.
Yeah, and it would allow offices that are not industrial related to just go in, basically, except for medical, of course, unless they're.
Right.
But,
So it really cleans it up.
yeah, it just cleans it up. It's an office building. Why not put it in the office zone? It's not spot zoning because it's contiguous with other CO zone sections of town right across the street, and so it just seems to work.
Okay.
So I was just curious, this lot, was it always this size, or was this part of a bigger lot? Was it subdivided at one time?
Subdivided at one time, and yeah, the history's a little murky. So, but it was built as one group of buildings. Many of the cul-de-sacs you'll see in the industrial zone in this town were built at the same time. It was built as a industrial park with one office building at the entrance and a bunch of industrial buildings inside. But we're not sure what the thought was behind putting an office building in the industrial zone like that.
And then how does it go to a legal non-conforming status? I don't understand that. If it's a planned light industrial zone, it's a planned light industrial zone. How does anything become legal? How do you legally do anything in the planned light industrial zone without adhering to the planned light industrial zone?
That typically happens when there's a change in standards that occur. So if you have an activity that's occurring, maybe the development standard, the municipal code changes. If that use is there, it's no longer in conformance with the new standard, so it's legal non-conforming.
Okay.
In this instance, to be honest, we honestly don't know if everything that exists there today is legal non-conforming. From a staff standpoint, over the last decade or more, we have been working with the property owner to try and find a way to memorialize what was there. It was brought to our attention circa 2012. There was an attempt by the director at that time to try and memorialize, not knowing all of the history, because it was, as Tom's mentioned, the records are not as solid and definitive as we would like them to be.
Okay.
So we gave them the benefit of the doubt, and from that point forward have allowed for them to continue to maintain the office, medical office activity that was identified at that time.
Is there a reason this didn't come up when we were doing the general plan update?
I realized that the other day. I was trying to think of why it was, but I don't recall why right now, why it wasn't brought up as part of that.
Because that seemed like it would have been a good time to.
Yeah,
Right.
well, it actually, we already started the general plan update well before he talked to us about that. That started in 2017, and we started talking about this in like 2018, I think.
Well, but it sounds like there was history well before that this was.
Correct, yeah, the
right.
general plan
Oh,
was
yes.
done in 15.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
Right.
for some reason, that was an oversight. And again, in the last year or so, it's really been a conversation we've had multiple times with the owner and the owner's representative to try and remedy the situation. And it became clear to us in a lot of dialogue and conversation that though it was intended back in 1985 when the building was constructed to be industrial, it's really never been used that way since shortly after it was opened. So we felt, even though that was an oversight in 15, we still needed to see what we could do to address it on a going forward basis today.
Okay. Yeah.
So I'm just curious, we have a retail overlay zone adjacent to this property. Why wouldn't we, or I would throw this out for discussion, why wouldn't we put a retail overlay zone over this property as well?
Well, I think it was, I guess our thought was it seemed to be more appropriate to go to the zone that's being recommended to you versus that retail overlay. Again, it's really not an area, though this zone would allow for retail, it really is going to be focused on office activity. It's designed for that. It's really not intended for retail activity in its current design and configuration. At most, maybe you could see maybe a small little food establishment comes in that's ancillary to the activity there, but it just does not really set up. It would have to be a complete redo to be retail focused. So we felt the zone that's being recommended to you would be the most appropriate.
Can't it be both? Can't it be the office zone with a retail overlay over it? That's what Arrowhead right now is, right next door. It's that same thing.
Yes, I guess the thought was it seemed better, I guess from my standpoint, fundamentally, instead of dealing with an overlay, it seemed a better fit to see that zone that's right across Catella fit that location.
Okay.
I mean, I guess that's in our discussion in looking at what is intended for the property, that what is being recommended to you would be the best fit.
Okay.
I see where Gary's going though, because like Arrowhead clearly isn't retail. It's if it gets redeveloped, where if in the future, if they redevelop this, and they're all together, do we want the overlay?
I think that at the time when something as large as Arrowhead goes to another use, that's something that we do need to revisit. It may be more appropriate to see this zone versus the overlay that's there now. But again, that's, I think, something that has to be evaluated at that point in time. I don't think anything in the near term appears apparent that Arrowhead's going anywhere.
Yeah.
And who knows, years from now, it could be something entirely of different focus from a land use standpoint. But right now, that overlay is there to provide option and opportunity for Arrowhead. But I think at the appropriate time, when a new development proposal comes onto that site, that's when that needs to be reconsidered.
Okay, and then I have one more question on the parking. You said currently there's plenty of parking. Is it 100% leased right now? The buildings?
If we could maybe have the hearing still open.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Or if the applicant could.
Yeah,
Hi there, my name's Orion Wise. I'm here for CGM Catella LLC, building owner for this, what we're proposing to do here. Currently, the building's always operated at somewhere between 95 and 100% occupancy since we've owned it in the last 6 years. We've done a pretty good job keeping it fully occupied. Currently, we have one vacancy. It's approximately 2,300 square feet. And we've already reflected that as an office use in the parking study that's part of the supplemental that gets incorporated on page 7 for the matrix that Tom's got on the agenda report, I think. So currently we would be planning on leasing that to, we'd originally on that space discussed putting a medical use in, and then that's what sort of started this conversation with the current staff, and then has gotten us to where we are today. So, but currently we've been looking at doing it as office, and there may be potential to do it as medical, but we would have to provide additional parking analysis and information for, staff to review before we could do anything else like that.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Art, do you have questions? Anybody else have questions for staff or?
No, I was just gonna
Commentary?
just comment a little bit on the retail overlay. If you all recall, I mean, at that time, for the Arrowhead property, the original recommendation was to not do an overlay, but to change that zone to retail, and that would make Arrowhead non-conforming. And with the idea that that large of a parcel, would be, redeveloped if ever they went out, and that the zone we wanted was to be retail, because the thought of the heavy industry, that type of uses that we had in our zone at the time, we're moving away from that. And this is not an industrial city, it's not Santa Fe Springs, this type of a thing. And so the thought was that it would be retail. And then in the course of our discussions or whatever, it was suggested to us that we go with an overlay as to provide an option. But keep in mind that the overlay doesn't mean retail. They can do what they want to do. It just gives them the opportunity to do that.
That was my
To
thought.
to do a retail, I mean, and you're not going to get retail in there unless, for some reason, zone-wise, we would have, it's still an industrial zone. But the thought of the city was to move away from initial thoughts was to move away from the heavy industrial and those uses. But we have since changed our uses and stuff like that, eliminating a lot of the objectionable uses that we had, so we've kind of eliminated that problem. That was, the rezone was going to retail would eliminate the prospect of heavy uses coming, objectionable industrial uses coming in that we had currently listed in our table, and we have since eliminated those objectionable uses, so therefore, the overlay is fine, or whatever. So that's just the history on that. And so I wouldn't conflate or try to impose a retail overlay over the site next to it. That was the thought process behind the overlay on Arrowhead, and I don't think I would carry that same thought process in to that property. I mean, it's not industrial. It's not, yeah, I mean, it's office, really. It's office, yeah. So, that's my only comment.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing at this point. And is there any further discussion up here? Would anyone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None? Motion carries. Congratulations. We have no staff reports, no discussion items, which brings us to item 10, items from the Development Services Director.
Chairman, Planning Commission members, just wanted to mention a couple of things to you briefly. First of all, at the City Council meeting this past Monday evening, the second reading of the ordinances regarding the zoning code and subdivision code update were considered, and those were approved on the consent calendar. So that those will go into effect in about 30 days. So just want to let you know that that chapter has closed. We have a new official zoning map. We're working on getting that into an actual exhibit, visual exhibit, but a new and official zoning map. And our zoning code and subdivision code updates will be codified shortly and available within about 30 days. Wanted to also mention an activity that's underway that will eventually have an impact upon our community. The Regional Housing Needs Assessment effort is underway. If you haven't been watching the information regarding this, it's such a great subject. This is a process, a state-mandated process that happens about every 7 years, in which the State Housing and Community Development identifies a expectation of new housing units to be built within the state. Those numbers are then distributed out to local or regional governments. So in this instance, the SCAG, or Southern California Association of Governments, is responsible for a distribution of a portion of those units out to the 4 counties and the cities within those 4 counties that are represented by SCAG. That process, that is a very involved methodology process. It is very, very difficult to follow and understand. So I won't go through all the detail on that. It would probably be a good 45 minute to an hour presentation to get you, even to all of us, to be try and understand that process. But the RENA allocation methodology process resulted in 3 options. Those options were considered within the SCAG region. There were 3 options. Those options were considered by the cities and the counties. As a result of comments that the SCAG received, they made a recommendation for a certain amount of units to be distributed out to the various cities and counties. We found those numbers to be reasonably acceptable to the city on a going forward basis. And again, these are numbers that would then have to be brought into an update to our housing element, and there's a certain amount of obligation and responsibility the city has going forward to address that. So we thought we were going a certain direction. There was a meeting here on November 7th, a SCAG Regional Council meeting, and the vote that occurred from the representatives, again, it's not SCAG, it's all of the representatives from various cities and the counties voted, and the vote did not go in favor of the numbers that we were hoping for. It ended up redistributing numbers around to where there were fewer households designated to, trying to be very general in this. It basically, it reallocated numbers from Imperial, Riverside, and LA County and put more numbers in Orange County. So our number went up about almost 3 times what was originally identified. So now at this point, the final draft is representing the need for us to accommodate 774 housing units over that window of time, in which 313 of those units have to be low and very low, serving low and very low income households. So that's a substantial number. It's far greater than what the RENA allocation was last cycle. So I wanted to make you aware of that. We're still at the staff level deciding what to do next, which could result in working with the mayor and council to provide some correspondence objecting to those numbers. There are other cities in Orange County that are currently contemplating that and taking an action to at least voice their concern over the ability to accommodate those numbers that have been identified.
Is that that's countywide, right?
No, that is for the numbers I just gave you are for our city.
300 units?
313.
700 and...
Yeah, 774 total units. That includes above moderate, there's 4 categories: above moderate, moderate, low, and very low units. They're identifying 313 of those 774 units have to be specific to low and very low income households.
We should, instead of a retail overlay, make a residential overlay for.
Question?
Yes, sir.
In our effort to meet those numbers, are we able to, these houses that we've just approved, these units that we've just approved, could those go towards our meeting that quota? In other words, when does the housing, is it when the plans are approved or when the certificate of occupancy is issued? So in other words, can we use those since they haven't been built yet to meet our quota?
It's a great question. My understanding is it is based on permits, the issuance of building permits. I can confirm that and let you know, but I know in my past life out in the desert, it's been based on the issuance of the permits versus actual occupancy. I should also say that the state law continues to change, or requirements, I should say, is being modified and changed. It's much more onerous today than it has been in previous cycles, meaning that there's certain things that we'll have to do with this housing update or housing element update that we haven't had to do in the past with regards to being able to prove that we can build those units within our jurisdiction. Now, keep in mind, our general plan, we've already exceeded our general plan numbers with the entitlements and construction of units that are currently underway in our community. So we're now, the state's now saying, yes, we know you have a general plan, you know that you've identified your capacity as a city, but you're gonna have to go way above that and accommodate all that. And that's, again, this is not just our jurisdiction. Many, in fact, I would say the majority of the cities in Orange County have received significant numbers, far greater than ours, that they're scrambling to try and figure out what to do and how to meet, how to accommodate those numbers. So I want to make you aware of it because it is a very important item. I think cumulatively it's a very important item for Orange County. Independently, it's obviously an important matter for us, but it's an important matter for the entire county. And I guess I can say this, I feel we were a bit hoodwinked by the other counties and how that vote came about. Every representative from Orange County voted against what was brought forward. However, we don't have enough votes to overtake the other counties that voted the other direction. So at any rate, I want to make you aware of that. There will be likely additional steps taken, but at least for you to know that that's an important matter that directly affects the commission and your purview, and more information to come from us here in the coming months. This is not a final number. I believe it's March of next year is when those numbers are official. Right now, the final draft numbers have been sent up to state HCD for their review. And then come March, SCAG will finalize those numbers, assuming that HCD finds them acceptable. So in the meantime, there is the opportunity to comment and express your concerns, which we're aiming to do.
You don't have the land, how do you do it?
I'm sorry?
You don't have the land, how do you do it? You don't have the land. I mean,
No.
We're built out. We're
As I've experienced elsewhere, the response quite too often from HCD when you're doing your housing loan is, we don't care. You figure it out. And it really makes it difficult for us to do that. So.
And if you don't?
It doesn't say what happens if you don't comply.
If they're unrealistic, unattainable numbers, why do you, I mean.
There are, again, what in the past with a lot of jurisdictions have taken as, we'll do our best. Let's just fill this out and make this work. It's a mathematical exercise. Again, it's becoming much more definitive with truing up properties that can accommodate, the additional density and being able to actually show that can happen within your jurisdiction. So again, that's a new step, this coming cycle of housing element updates that we have not seen in previous years that everybody's trying to figure out as well. And as we've seen, their performance is important too. One of our neighboring cities, Huntington Beach, is, I think, still in a lawsuit with the state over non-compliance with performing, in accordance to their housing element. So we want to watch that very carefully going forward. So again,
Does this affect unincorporated towns as much?
yes, so there is a distribution of those numbers to not just the cities, it also each county has a requirement to meet an allocated number as well of units. So the county does have a large number that was allocated to them too. Of course, they have a little more area to work with, but still it can be very difficult. The county has there's a lot of land. A lot of that land is protected and is not available for development. So I assume it will be a challenge for Orange County.
Could we donate some of it to them? Let them figure it out?
Well, it would have been, what we found acceptable was, again, a higher distribution of those SCAG area numbers going to the other three counties, which have more real estate to work with. And the challenge is, their counter was those numbers should be going to job centers. And it's hard to argue that, because the way it's set up really from the state is, if you're a transit, if you're served by transit, if you have the jobs, there needs to be a closer ratio of living units to jobs. What is forgotten in that argument, in my humble opinion, is those other areas that fought against this. I'll pick on Riverside County since I know it very well. They're fighting very hard to get job centers established in their areas, and over time that will likely happen within the foreseeable future, but they will not have the requirement and obligation to bring the units in with those jobs. So there's some challenges there. So again, we'll be doing our part to assess and evaluate this, and I anticipate a letter will be going to SCAG as a result of what transpired. I wanted to, just two other things I just wanted to mention to you. We have, as a reminder, we have the Commissioner Holiday Dinner coming up December 12th at 5 o'clock at Old Ranch Country Club. I believe a few of you have signed up, and if you have not and are interested in going, if you could please reach out and let Chelsea know as soon as possible. Hopefully you all can attend. I enjoyed it last year and hope to see all of you there this year. And then just the one final thing I wanted to mention from myself and staff is, we hope you and your family have a very happy Thanksgiving. It's been a great year, a lot to be thankful for, and thank you for your service. So hope you have a wonderful Thanksgiving holiday.
You as well.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. All right, Commissioner reports. Anything from anyone up here?
Just a question for staff. On the project, on the Monte Collins property, where they're doing the cleanup on the site there.
Yes.
We had a requirement that they record a document, outline the conditions, I believe, regarding the cleanup and stuff like that. Has that been recorded?
There is a recorded document on that. However, the exact language that we wanted to see is still outstanding. So we're continuing to work with our legal counsel and theirs to get that final language to an acceptable level. How do I say this? I didn't find what they provided acceptable, and we've asked them to revisit
Weren't we
that.
pretty specific? Just take the language out of our, it was basically just the conditions that were laid out in the resolution.
Well, the conditions laid out in the resolution have been recorded, but there was a separate document that we wanted to have independent of the conditions, and we're still working through that between our legal counsel and theirs to finalize that. So it's still there, but the conditions have been properly recorded against the property. But that specific document, independent of that, is still outstanding.
I mean, that's all for disclosure for people getting themselves involved in it. I mean, I would think that that's
Yes,
critical.
it is, and it's been a little bit. We'll revisit it again with their attorney. So there was conversation here within the last, I think, 60 days or so. But we need to revisit it again.
All right, anything else? All right, thank you very much. Meeting adjourned.
John.